Cre nin televizi mo giganat me dis extric jagamet. My name is Mel Compton. My spirit name is Strong Tree Spirit, and I am Mi'kmaq from the East Coast Maritime Provinces, primarily Newfoundland from Soapstone. I am Caribou Clan, and I am here to show you how to make a soapstone carving amulet. Two different ways. One that will just attach right onto the necklace string, and another one that does not have a drilled hole in it, and we can use as an amulet piece to put inside a necklace cage. So I hope you enjoy. Take care. Laleok. Here is my setup. In your materials, you will find your nail kit. The tools are pretty much the same that you use for carving. I like using them because they do have some of the precision tips on them. You'll see some of the smaller tips and the pointed tips. I prefer using them. This polishing cloth and the mineral oil you can put aside for now. You don't need that immediately. That will be at the end, as well as your necklace cage and necklace. That can be put to the side for now as well. You'll see that I only have my one soapstone piece with the drill hole in it. I have already done this one right here, which is in the necklace cage, and I will show you that one a little bit later. Some of the extra things that you will need is a pencil or a marker and a cup or a little tiny bowl of water. What you'll also see is the sandpaper is cut up into little squares. Okay, so one of the first things that I do is I'm going to dip my soapstone in water, get off some of the dust from it previously being cut. And then I'm going to put it on the paper towel, dry it off. I'm going to let it air dry for a few minutes. And then this is where you are going to want your pencil or your marker. You do want to have some type of mat or paper towel or a napkin, something prepared on your space, because you will see that there's going to be a lot of dust that comes off of the soapstone. So once that's fully dry, you'll see I kind of already put a little bit of a drying. I do want to make an arrow. So with your pencil or your pen or your fine tip marker or whichever marker you have, make sure you don't draw anything over top of the drill hole, because that's where your necklace piece is going to fit through later on. And so this is where you're going to want to clear your space a little bit more. I prefer using this tool first to shave off some of the pieces. The reason being is because it's flat on one side and there's a little bit of a bump over top, like a little tiny bump on the top part of it. And it helps with the flat edge, but it also helps to sand off some of the pieces on the other side. So I'm going to very gently, not on top of the line directly, but just on the outside of the line, I'm going to start to saw some of the excess off. Now, what you want to be mindful of, you want to take this process very slow, because soapstone is very breakable. You'll see in a picture that I will add that in carving out this necklace piece to show you folks, this was actually going to be a heart, and I had to change it in the middle of the process because I broke the soapstone. So you're going to saw it very gently, and you're going to keep doing this until the piece sort of just pops off. So one thing that you do want to keep in mind when you're sawing, I know you have a flat edge, but you want to make sure that you're not sawing like this, just because what's going to happen is you're going to saw underneath the backside, and because the soapstone, you want the shape to be on both sides. I'm taking the saw and I'm not going straight, I'm slanting it slightly outwards. So when I'm sawing, I don't know if you can see that on camera, but I'm not going straight, I'm bending it. So I'm not straight, I'm bending it slightly out. So the curved edge is bent slightly out. And what this is gonna do is it's gonna help you just fix the shape later on, which is why we have the sandpaper and the polishing nail kit tool. So when you're going around tight and sharp lines, you wanna do your temporary lines first before you start shaving down. You'll see that I have the indent lines right there ready to carve out those corner pieces. You're going to use very slow movements. Sometimes what happens is when you're not taking turns going back and forth, the piece on one side will be ready to break off, and then it'll crack the rest of the top piece of your soapstone. So finish carving out your piece, and once you get there, you'll notice that there's some jagged edges and maybe not the same size on the back, but we will get to that afterwards. You'll notice here that it didn't break off very cleanly, and that's okay. So this is where I'm going to use the smaller tool and go in and sort of just sand that down a little bit more. And I'm going to show you when you get to about here, when the side divots begin to cave in a little more, but you know that sort of the inside part hasn't been shaved down enough, this is where this tool is going to come in handy. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start in the inside, and in one motion, one pass. We're not going to scribble, we're not going to go like this. One pass from the center out, center out. Now you'll do that, and then you'll also come in with this tool to continue shaving down the sides. Once you start getting to closer to the end here, you don't have to do as many passes, you don't have to go in and out like this. You can sort of do the same idea and just one pass at a time from the center to out to the end of the piece. Now, when this piece breaks off, you can use the curvy side to sort of file that chunk down, and then this is where the smaller one is going to come into play, and you can use it to start getting that curve that you want in that area. And then you'll notice that it's starting to shave down. You can come in here with this tool and shave down parts of the sides. Now I kind of want the arrow going in on a slant, so this is where I'm going to start slanting in towards that piece, and then we want to flatten this out. And then this is where we can come in later on and shave down some of those rough edges and those sides. This is where this tool comes into play, and we'll just sort of flatten that out and make it straight. And then once your piece is completely carved, you can begin to start shaping it. So I'm going to go around and just flatten the entire piece, make sure all parts are even. Back part of this isn't even. I'm going to try to file it down as straight as I can to make the back part as even with the front as I can. Okay, so that's starting to look a little bit better. Took a little bit of a chunk out of the top part here, so I'm going to go in and shave that side piece down. I'm going to shave that tip that I had started. I'm going to shave it right down to match up with the flat side of the other part. Okay, so I'm going to polish this up a little bit. I'm going to do a little bit more shaving down, and I will show you the next part. Okay, so I've carved out the piece, and this is sort of the direction that I'm going in. And what you're going to do now, once you've carved out the main part of your piece, this is where you're going to dip it in your water. You're going to clean off all of that excess dust. And you're going to dry it slightly. Again, very gently. As you put the soapstone in the water, it does become even more malleable, so you want to, again, make sure you're being gentle with the piece. You'll begin to start seeing some of the colors that are going to come through the soapstone. Where it's really going to come through is when we use the mineral oil and the polishing edge later. And this is where I'm going to start using my sandpaper. So I'm going to grab the one that has a lot more of the shiny part on it. And I sort of want this part to be a little bit more of a rounded tip. It's not entirely perfect and uniform, and that's what I sort of love about it. I do want to make this part a little bit more rounded. I am going to round up the tips a little bit. The reason being, soapstone is very susceptible to damage when you're wearing it just like this. I do recommend, after a couple of treatments of mineral oil, maybe sealing it with clear nail polish, or if some type of varnish, if you have. Clear nail polish works fine, but you just want to make sure that if you are going to wear it all the time, that you have some type of sealant on it so that it doesn't snap, because I have a piece that I wear every so often, and I took a chunk out of it the other day, and that was just because it's just wear and tear of the soapstone. They're very susceptible to damage. Okay, so taking your grainy sandpaper, the one that feels the roughest, this is where you're just going to start coming in and putting in some of those details. So for me, I am just sort of rounding out the tips a little bit so that the sharp points aren't impacted when I wear it. And this is where you can sort of come in and just kind of wipe down some of the excess on your piece, get some of that dust off. You are going to create a little bit more dust with the sandpaper, but you're not going to have as much of a mess with the tools, or sorry, with the sandpaper that you did with the tools. So again, just because I'm a little bit nervous about having a very sharp point there, I'm deciding to round it off a little bit. I still want it to look like a point, so I'm going to do a little bit harder passes to make sure that the arrow keeps its shape while rounding it off at the tip. The best part about soapstone is that because it is so malleable, if it breaks, it doesn't mean that it can't be fixed or adapted into another shape. And again, because you are working with two sides, you do want to flip the piece around every couple of passes, just to make sure that you're keeping the shape on both sides. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to then come in here and I'm going to start sort of doing one of these to start forming that circular edge. So I'm just going in and I'm sort of brushing like this. Instead of going straight across, I am rolling the paper. I'm using the tips of my fingers as well, just to get that motion. Okay, so at this point, I've sort of pushed the tools off to the side. I've gotten rid of all the dust. I'm going to show you how to put this piece into the necklace cage. But before that, you're going to have your other tools that have been put to the side. So your necklace piece, you're going to want to get out your cage, the mineral oil that you can take out of the container or out of the baggie. Do keep it in the baggie for the most part when you're storing it, because sometimes it will leak. Your polishing cloth and the file. Because once I get it to the designated shape and sort of style that I like, I'm going to put it back in the water. And I didn't do a large number of treatments on this one, so I'm going to put that back in the water as well. And so same idea, you're going to get off all of that dust. You're going to make sure that the piece is nice and clean. The other piece. So I did this piece the exact same way. I drew on the shape, like I had mentioned earlier. I had actually drawn out a heart, and in the process, I was moving a little bit too quick, and I broke the piece. And so sometimes the pieces just end up being something completely different than what you originally intended, and that's okay. So I don't need all of these pieces. I'm gonna push those off to the side. I've already used this one a little bit, and I've used this one. I'm gonna push that one off to the side. And so all I'm going to do briefly is I'm just going to take a couple passes with the polishing sandpaper. You're going to see a lot of lines. Sometimes those lines are because of the nail file, and sometimes that's the pattern that's embedded into the soapstone. You don't know yet unless you start trying to polish it off. And so what I do is I just gently go over the top, but I begin to sort of shave down that top layer and polish up the piece a little bit. And what you'll see is some of the natural colors of the soapstone coming through, and you'll see that more once we put the oil treatment on it, but you'll sort of get rid of all those very harsh nail file lines. And so the one I'm using, it's the navy blue one. It is the darkest navy blue. I believe there are 2 navy blues in your kit. I haven't actually used the lighter blue, navy blue. I've just used the dark one. I'm gonna put that down. I'm gonna quickly run it over this piece as well. I would suggest that when you are doing this, if you are somebody like me who likes to wear jewelry, you remove your jewelry. I'm just used to this one ring being on, but I normally wear a couple of other pieces of jewelry and I've taken them off. This can get, as you can see before, it got quite dusty. And so you just want to make sure that if there's any piece that is of significant value to you, that you're not getting it dirty. Okay, so now I'm gonna move that over. I'm gonna go off to the softer piece of sandpaper. This is the gray one. And again, I'm gonna do the exact same thing. This one just has a lot less grain on it. It's not as harsh. And I'm going in, this is the one where I'm going in and I'm moving in a circular motion. So same with this piece, we're gonna go over it. So again, I'm gonna put it in the water. I'm gonna let it soak for a few minutes. I'm going to actually use some of this water to clean off the dust off my hands. And then I'm just gonna flip the paper towel over and I'm going to dry these off. So it would be at this point, before you put the oil on, that if you wanted to put any designs into your piece or any other crevices, any other pattern. So on this one, I'm not sure if you can see very well, but I enhanced the lines that were on it and I just scratched in a little bit of a deeper line. So very, very, very gently, if you wanted to scrib in some designs, this is when you would do it. So on this side, I just went with the design work. So again, just very carefully putting in those divots. And again, if you wanted to, what you could do is just do very soft lines, and then maybe later on, maybe you're a little bit bored of your piece and you want it to go a little bit deeper, you can just dip it in water and scratch in whatever design that you wanted to. Some folks do like to use a pencil at this point to do lines on it, just to make sure, like if you're going for symmetry or if you want things to be even, then you can mark on it. And when you begin to do the lines, the dust will come off, the pencil marks will come off with the dust as you're scraping into the piece. So again, just very briefly, I just scribbled in some lines. I'm going to dip that back into the water. And you can see the lines there. So I'm going to put that off to the side for a few minutes. I'm going to let that dry a little bit more. And now this is where I'm going to use this. So I don't necessarily need the number 1 and number 2. So the nail file and removing of the ridges. I'm going to go to number 3, smoothing and the nail shine. I know this is a nail file emery board, but I find these tools a lot softer to use than some of the other polishing tools. Like I think I mentioned in a different part earlier, but these tools, like this has a very fine point on it, where some of the soapstone carving tools, they're not meant for little pieces like this or little amulet pieces. They're meant for larger carvings. And so you may end up with a scrape tool and it's going to be very thick at the tip. And if you want to do very delicate work like this, then the tools that I usually work with, especially because I do like doing delicate pieces like this, are the nail files and using nail kits. When I first got into this, I just went to a dollar store or like a very cheap store and picked up one of those manicure kits. And I used the pointy metal nail file and I used one of the scraper tools, and that's how I made my first amulet. So I'm not going to put any lines into this one right now. I might later, but taking number 3, again, you can't even hear it. It's so soft. I'm just going to soften the edges. I'm going to go over the tops. So you can spend a little bit more time on this. You can spend a little bit more time polishing up those lines if you want. You don't need to keep it this thick. You can thin out some of the pieces. I'm going to keep mine like this for now. Very simple. And then that way it leaves room for me to change it if I need to later on. So using the white side now, again, just sort of polishing it off. What this does is it allows for a lot of that dust to come off also and softens out those lines that are on it, because now it's soft. I don't feel a lot of ridges. There are a few ridges up here, and I think that's just the design and the pattern that's in the soapstone itself, because this line right here goes, it's a little bit of a groove. You can soften that up if you want. You just go back in with the sandpaper. So I'm going to quickly do this with this one. Okay. So now what we're going to do, because there's a little bit of dust on the paper towel, I am going to just flip the paper towel over so there's no dust. And I'm going to take my oil. You don't need a lot of oil at all. I'm going to shake it onto my fingers. I'm going to rub a bit onto my fingers, and then you just start putting it onto that piece. And you'll notice immediately that color changed into a deeper orange. And so sometimes I did do a treatment earlier when I did this. I did 2 treatments, and you'll notice that it did dry out again. That's okay. You may just have to do a couple more treatments on it and let it set. Don't fidget with it, because usually with the oil treatment you want to let it set for a while. Keep coming back, putting a little bit more oil on it, but you really don't need a lot of oil. And for folks that if you have bear grease at home, you can use bear grease on this. But again, just making sure that you give it time for the oil to set in. See, now you don't see any white lines on those creases. It looks like part of the pattern in the piece. You see the nice black little dots coming through, and you begin to see the beautiful color coming through the soapstone. I think the very unique thing about soapstone, and one of the things that I really love about soapstone, is that as you're carving it, you really don't know what color you're getting underneath until you begin to put the oil on. You can even do a spot test if you wanted. If you did have a lot of pieces of soapstone, you can do a spot test, and you can really see what that color is going to be before you start working with it. So again, we're going to do the same thing. You can see that beautiful deep orange and browny color coming through the piece. Now this is where the polishing cloth is going to help get into some of these crevices. What you could do after you do the outside part of the piece is you can try to pour some of the oil onto it. I just really like using my fingers because it gets into the piece a little bit better. But if you'll notice some of the other areas, it's not as easy for it to go in. If you have a Q-tip, you can also soak the Q-tip and get it right into those crevices. Because this is going to get a little bit harder to go in, you're just going to soak a little bit of the oil onto this polishing cloth. I find these containers adorable. And so you can just really, and gently, you don't want to break your piece, and gently just rub in the oil right into those pieces. You may have to put it right on the tip of the cloth. And then put that part right in there. There we go. Okay. So you'll already start to notice this piece is starting to dry a little bit. I can see a little bit of it, those creases, and there's creases on either side. I'm going to give that a few more minutes to rest. And then what you can do is, after you let it set for probably about 10 minutes or so, you'll notice it'll start going back to its sort of duller color. Come in, do another treatment. You can do as many treatments as you need to do, because it is stone. So you want this oil to be able to seep into the stone, and that's what it's doing. When it dries and it goes back into sort of a dingier color or a duller color, it's seeping into the stone. And so if it doesn't stay at this color, you can continue to do as many treatments as you need to. Just let it dry in between treatments, and then once you get your desired color, you can move forward and finish your piece. So what you'll need afterwards is your one plain necklace to go into the one that has a drill hole, and then you will need your second necklace piece that you can push your necklace cage onto to put the one without the hole in it. Now what I did, because I did need to squish part of the first loop in order to get it in, I was able to push it. I did use a nail file at one point and I held it up, and I was able to use a nail file to squish it down a little bit just to fit it through here. If you have any type of pliers, you can use pliers and just squish it a little bit. It doesn't need to be overly squished to fit it in place. But these are the pieces that you will need moving forward. So what I have here, this is my old soapstone necklace that I did, one of the second carvings I did. And you'll notice that I did change the shape. I didn't keep it as thick as I did these ones. I messed around with the shape a little bit. It did come in a square just like these ones did. I put some indent piece work in it. I put some line work in it. That's how this one looks. And I didn't know that this was the color until I put the mineral oil on it. The great thing about this is you can't actually pinpoint where I chipped it, but it was right there and back there. And I was able to go in, and I could go in further and sand that down and just soften those edges a little bit more, polish it off with the cloth and the oil, and it will disappear and it'll go back to the way it was. So I am just dabbing a little bit of oil onto the cloth now. And so I do want to do this just to make sure that all of it is covered. So I'm sort of adding in a little bit more oil, but I'm also wiping the oil off as I'm doing this. And so just a little bit, making sure that it's covered. If you have long nails like I do, be very careful. But as you can see, it just quickly disappears, it goes away. Okay. If you have any other string or thread, if you want to do a braided piece and slide it through, definitely do that. I will have to squeeze each of these pieces with pliers in order to get it into that hole, and so I'm going to do that before I put that piece in. But I'm going to show you how to do this. And so there is this loop right there that you push the necklace thing through, and the amazing part about this, and I do have another example here, is that you can pull it as open as you need to pull it. You can twist it into another shape, and all you do is open it, and however you want your piece to go in, again being gentle not to scrape it, you just slide your piece into this next necklace cage. This is another example, same necklace, same style of cage, just a little bit bigger, and it was a large stone that was gifted to me, and I wanted to wear it, so I was able to I did have to use pliers for this because the stone is a little bit larger, and yeah, I put it in here. You can do this with any other stone. Some stones that you find outside, or some stone this is, you can put some mineral oil on it to have the color shine through a lot better, and if you have an extra necklace cage, you can put it in there. Okay, so you might notice that the rings on the necklace may not fit through your pendant. So I've already started, but what you'll do is you're just going to take your pointy tool, put another piece of paper towel down or whatever you're using to cover your table. You're going to just very gently back and forth rotate with the file and just open up that hole a little bit. And how I'm going to do this is I'm actually going to disconnect this piece from here to slide the necklace piece on, and then I'm going to reattach. With your file, if you push it down and just pull up with another hook of file. So you're going to unhook this piece if it would like to come off. Okay, we're going to gently put that aside. We're going to take the point and slide it through, and then we're going to reattach that circle piece to that little hook piece right there. Okay, so I'm going to put this back in, and then you're going to push the pieces back together like that. And so I did switch my necklace piece. I switched it to a purple one. What you could do is you can always squeeze these pieces together and fix them once you get it through, but that may be more of a hassle. And there is your final two pieces. And here are some examples, like I mentioned, I believe earlier, of other ways that you can utilize the necklace cage. So you can put a stone in it. And this is one of the first soapstone pieces that I carved. You'll notice that there's some ridges in it. You'll notice that there's some line work. I kept these ones solid. I did do a little bit of layering work or leveling work on that. Hope you enjoyed the lally oak and have a good rest of your day.